In the year 2010, the chess world has witnessed one of the greatest chess games of all times. It was a beautiful, sharp, tactical battle between Boris Gelfand and Hikaru Nakamura. And I think many chess history books will write about this game as maybe the Hikaru Nakamura Immortal. I think this is the game that I think everyone will memorize about Hikaru Nakamura, because probably Hikaru has many great games, but I think this is his most spectacular games, where he played really sharp tactical ideas, where he played incredible immortal tactical sequences. Be prepared, this was simply chess from another dimension. This was simply Hikaru Nakamura in his prime. So let's see now the game. Boris Gelfand with the white pieces opened with the move d4. Hikaru's response was knight to f6 and after move c4, g6. Here Hikaru is already announcing a sharp game, because out of this position you can maybe get some greenfield structures, or you can get some King's Indian structures. So of course both openings are really wild, both openings are really sharp for both sides. So in the continuation, knight to c3 played by Boris, we have now bishop to g7 after move e4. We have now the normal King's Indian setup with the move d6. And okay, white has a powerful central control with his 3 pawns in the center, has also this powerful knight in the center of the board on c3. And of course the normal idea here from white's perspective is to play normal development. Here Hikaru castles. We have now the move bishop to e2, which is now the so-called Orthodox variation, really one of the most classical systems here from white's perspective. And black has basically two choices now what to do. Black can break the position with moves like c5, or can break the position with moves like e5. I think this move c5 leads into more Benoni structures that I don't like in many occasions, so that's why the most aggressive way is of course to go with this sharp method of the King's Indian, breaking and entering immediately with the move e5. And you see many times of course white doesn't want to react. White hopes that you pick up here the pawn on d4, and then of course you get your knight centralized on d4. So that's why white delays the situation in the center of the board and plays now simply kingside castle. If you play something like d takes e5 here, I've explained it many times in my videos, because I've created this King's Indian series from black's perspective on my YouTube chess channel. There are about 50 videos, really some important sidelines from black's perspective in the King's Indian. You can check it out. You can have maybe a good preparation. So also in this particular line, d takes e5 doesn't make sense. You could maybe try this one. Now after if you pick up the pawn on e5, we just trade off the queens on d1. After bishop to d1, we can also pick up this pawn, and you see now this knight is attacked, and I think black should be solid here, even slightly better in this particular position. So that's why after move e5, as we said, kingside castling. Now we play here from black's perspective again sort of a teasing move in the center of the board. We want to have a certain clarification now in the center of the board. We want to force a reaction of whites, because we don't tolerate a little bit here from black's perspective the tension in the center. We hope that, as we said, white either takes the pawn on e5 or white makes further progress with the move d5. So in the continuation, Boris plays now the move d5. He has now a beautiful space advantage in the center. He has powerful 3 connected pawns, and now you have to play of course knight to e7. Let's stop and evaluate a little bit the position. Obviously black is going to coordinate the attack towards the king side here, because the small pawn chain c6 d7 e5 is showing us the direction of the attack. On the other hand, white's direction of the attack will be of course the queen side attack, because also the small pawn chain is showing this kind of a direction of the attack. And we have to also notice that black has here a lack of defenders on this side of the board. Many pieces are of course rerouted here towards the king side. So now with moves like b4 and c5, white is trying to break through here on this side of the board. So in the continuation, knight to d2 was played by Boris Gelfand. Basically, you have, I think, here sort of 3 choices that you can play. You can play the bayonet attack with the move b4 immediately from white's perspective, or you can play this idea, knight to e1 and knight to d3, and maybe fix the position with f3, maybe knight to f2 for further control. You can have a further control of the g4 square, because many times black is trying to break the position on the square g4. You'll see also in the continuation of this game that actually it's really many times in the King's Indian a battle for the g4 square. There are certain defensive ideas from white's perspective to do this kind of a maneuver: knight to e1, knight to d3, f3, and then knight to f2 controlling g4, or just play knight to d3, b4, c5. But here Boris Gelfand tried a different idea. He plays knight to d2 with the idea to play b4, c5, and then to have access of this beautiful c4 square, where it could create further pressure around the square d6, because we have to agree here, it's a small pawn chain that black has built here. So the best way, of course, to break the pawn chain is in the center of the pawn chain, which is of course now the d6 square. That's, I think, the idea of white. White is trying to break the position there on the queen side. So here in the continuation, we have now knight to e8. Finally, Hikaru is preparing methods of f5, f4, trying to get his goal, trying to really have a beautiful kingside attack. And in many King's Indians, I think you have to understand what's going on, because black has to destroy here white. If white defends the position on the king side, then I think white is winning the game for sure, because of the space advantage here on the queen side, and you could have several positional problems. So that's why not so many King's Indian defense games end with a draw, especially in this types of position, in this classical orthodox systems, where of course we create this kingside attack. If black doesn't make, as I said, anything out of his attack here on the king side, then he could face many positional problems. So that's why it's really a sharp game. You have to use now your attacking skills here from black's perspective. So in the continuation, b4 was played by Gelfand. We have now the move f5. We have now this idea c5, and now knight to f6, of course, by Hikaru Nakamura. Now comes f3. Very important move here by Boris Gelfand, because if you play aggressively here with the move knight to c4, then I think black will simply pick up the knight to, the pawn on e4. After knight to e4, f takes e4, it's not the problem actually that you lost a pawn here. It doesn't matter. You can still play blockade around the square e3 with bishop to e3. That's not the main issue. The main issue is actually that the knight will be rerouted here to from f5 to d4. That will be now a very important square. So that's, I think, the downside about this particular line. It's not the problem that you stopped a little bit here the progress. It doesn't matter because you lost the pawn. But as I said, the knight will jump here on d4, and black is facing again white is facing here huge positional problems. So that's why after move knight to f6, you have to fix now the pawn structure with move f3. Hikaru breaks now through here with the move f4. He creates now also spaces here, and he's hoping now to have this goal g5 and finally g4. As we said, we have talked about this idea to maybe reroute the knight on e1, knight to d3, knight to f2, and then you could have maybe a good protection of the square g4. I've explained also this methods in one of my King's Indian videos. So here in the continuation, after move f4, we have now knight to c4 by Boris Gelfand. Hikaru continues the pressure with the move g5, but still you need your other resource. You still have to play h5 and then maybe g4 in order to create a breakthrough here on this side of the board. Here Gelfand continues with the move a4. We have now the move knight to g6, preparing again h5 and g4. In the continuation, bishop to a3, which is of course already a tricky move here by Boris Gelfand, which is of course attacking the rook on f8 indirectly, of course not directly, but if something clears on this dark square diagonal, then the rook on f8 could be endangered, and black could face many again tactical problems. So that's why Hikaru gets out of the potential range of the dark square bishop. But this move, rook to f7, is a classical move, I think, in King's Indians from black's perspective. You see this move many times, even in some other occasions, because this move is a flexible move. First of all, this rook lift that you play on the 7th rank is used in order to protect your 7th rank. There are many pawns that have to be protected, but not only that you are protecting your pawns, you use also this rook on the g file in order to attack the king and in order to support further your g4 progress. That's, I think, a very important method that you have to know if you want to play the King's Indian. It's a must-know move, sort of. It's a really typical move for this kind of structure. So in the continuation, here Boris Gelfand continues with the normal attack here on the queen side. We have now the d takes e5, a very important choice here by Hikaru Nakamura, because if you play bishop to f8, this will be, I think, simply too passive. Now white is already there. White will simply break the position immediately with the move b6, and that's exactly what white wants to get out of this position. White wants to be faster on the attack. Look at this. We still need h5, g4, maybe g3. We need 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 tempi just in order to attack the king somehow. Meanwhile, white is already there. So that's, I think, the problem of this particular line. If you play this passive move bishop to f8, this is not working. So that's why a good choice here by Hikaru Nakamura. D takes c5 releases a little bit the pressure here on the queen side, forces now this move bishop to c5, and okay, at least black gained some time. Black gained some tempi in order to create further the attack. Here the continuation h5 was played by Hikaru Nakamura, and now the move a5 here by Boris Gelfand, and again he's trying to get this goal here, the move b6. If you play d6 here immediately, this wouldn't be so good. I think it seems tempting, and it seems so that maybe black gets destroyed by this particular move, but actually this gives here black the opportunity to get with the bishop into the game. Now you can play maybe d takes c7, but look at this, what happens. We just pick up the queen, and after rook to d1 we pick up now the pawn. Look how important this rook is now on the 7th rank, and now 3 pieces are lined up on the c file, and I think this is not working simply for white. So this is not a good choice. So that's why after move bishop to c5 and h4, h5 here, a5 was played by Boris Gelfand. He's trying now to get this b6 goal. So here g4, and finally Hikaru is there. Finally he has enough support of the g4 square. As I said many times, with maneuvers to f2 with the knight, white is trying to hold on somehow the position on g4, but now Hikaru is breaking this position. I'm not saying that black is winning because black is breaking here the king side, but that's simply how you play the game. If you don't make, as I said, out of this attack any possible sort of tactical threats, then you're getting destroyed here on the queen side with b6 moves and similar stuff. So that's why Boris continues with the move b6. We have now the move g3, and now a very important move here, king to h1 by Boris Gelfand. There is now a tricky tactical shot with the move h3. If you play bishop h3, then I think also one of the common tactics, it's really a common tactic, whenever you have the opportunity maybe to sacrifice your bishop on h3 in the king's Indian, try to consider it at least. Maybe in some occasion it's not working, but in this particular position it would work perfectly, because now if you take, now we play queen to c8, we're threatening to get again the pawn on h3. Now you have to protect, but now with knight to h4 the king gets destroyed, the queen is coming into the game, and there's simply no good defense against this monstrous attack here on the king side. So you see, this is a common tactic that you would face if you play the move h3. So that's why here Boris Gelfand is playing king to h1, because now if you play, of course, here g takes h3, then g takes h2, pardon me, then your attack is a little bit splashed. Meanwhile, you see, as we said, white is already having here some kind of an attack. So after this move, I think the king is secured. The only way to make somehow some kind of a check is somehow to reroute your knight here on g3, but still white has good defensive resources. White can get back with the bishop on f2, and whenever the knight comes on g3, we'll simply pick it up. And as I said, here with this activity, with the potential activity by the light square bishop on this diagonal, as I said, black is facing many tactical problems. So this is not working. So that's why after move king to h1, Hikaru plays now bishop to f8 finally, and this is the way to go, because in many occasions this dark square bishop is a good piece. But look at this pawn chain simply blocked out the activity of the dark square bishop. It's not a good bishop. Actually, our light square bishop, it's the best minor piece on the board. We have seen this beautiful tactical threats that were possible around the square h3. Now Hikaru is hoping to get rid of this bad bishop for a monstrous bishop here of whites, because the bishop on c5 is actually here the best minor piece of white. So that's why here Boris didn't allow this scenario, played now the move d6, is hoping finally to break through here in the center of the board. We have now a takes b6, and now a weird choice, but it's really the best move that Boris Gelfand played here. He plays now a beautiful bishop to g1, because the bishop can be used, as we said, as a defensive resource here in order to defend white's king. So if you play something like d takes c7 in this particular position, it's not so good, because then of course the queens are off the board. We have to trade off now the queens, and now we just pick up the bishop and the game should be over. So it's not working. You could maybe try this kind of an idea, knight to b6, we just pick up the knight. After a takes b6, now we pick up the rook. After rook to a1, now we get out of the potential range of the light square bishop, because there were some threats of some attacking opportunities. And now after something like, I don't know, rook to a8, we have here this move, knight to e7, and maybe everything is, I think, compact, everything is good together. This is now a position that we can defend. So maybe then later we can also go with knight to d7, and we can pick up maybe here the weak pawn on b6. So if you play, for instance, in this position a takes b6, if you don't want to trade off the queens, then actually we play rook takes a1, the queen gets deflected from the d file. Now we pick up here the pawn on d6, and look what would have happened, for instance, in this particular line. If white plays now the move rook to d1, then you get a new monster tactic, knight to g4. And don't forget about this, bishop to h3 and knight to g4 are really the main tactical motifs of the king's Indian defense, because this move is liberating this diagonal for the queen. Don't forget about this. Whenever you have maybe the opportunity to play bishop takes h3 or knight to g4, do this. Try at least to consider these two moves. These are your main tactical motifs of the king's Indian defense. Here, for instance, in this particular line, this wasn't played in the game because, as we said, Gelfand retreated to g1. But now look at this. You pick up here the knight. Now the queen is coming into the game. You're getting destroyed around the square h2. You could maybe try to get the bishop into the game, but now look at this. H takes g4 opens now here the h file. Really stunning stuff. You can even play f3. I think this bishop is coming into the game, so it's now really position that white can resign immediately. So that's why bishop to g1, a very important move here by Boris Gelfand. Now Hikaru continues with this move, knight to h4. Very important move. He's targeting now this g2 square, and now comes, I think, already one of the critical moments of the game. Here Boris played rook to e1, and this is, in my opinion, not the best of moves. There is maybe only this move as a defensive resource, h takes g3. H takes g3 is maybe here the must move for white, because here after f takes g3 we can finally get our bishop here on e3, and you can maybe try this idea, bishop to h3, because of g takes h3. Of course, we're playing now the move g2, and we create a fork against the rook and the king, but actually white doesn't have to react. After bishop to h3, we just play here rook to g1, and we have a good defensive resource. This wasn't again played in the game, but that was maybe the only way here for Boris to stay in the game. Here actually I think white is slightly better. Here you can maybe try the move queen to d7, but now with bishop to f1 we can have a great protection here on the king side, and now we get our goal here on this side of the board. We'll simply continue the pressure with both of these knights with the rook's activity. So this was the move here for Boris Gelfand. But as we said, instead of this move h takes g3, here Boris Gelfand played rook to e1, and this move is not good because here Hikaru Nakamura played a beautiful, stunning, immortal tactic, knight takes g2. This is a beautiful move because it decoys the king towards the g file. Here, let's see what happens if you play king takes g2. King takes g2 is maybe a slightly better continuation for Boris Gelfand. In the game, Boris played here this one. This was a huge blunder. From this point on, it's a one-way ticket. But even if you play here king takes g2, I think it's not so good because of this move. Rook to g7. Look at this. The rook is coming into the game on the g file. If you play something like knight to e5, if you try maybe to grab this pawn, then we play g takes h2. You have to step back, and now with bishop to d6, we're getting this knight attacked. If you maybe try to retreat with your knight here, maybe to d3, look what happens. If you try to retreat with a knight to g4, again this liberating motif. Again, this knight is coming in a brutal way into the game. Now you just pick up maybe the knight, but look at this. Now f3 comes with the discovered attack. You have to step back somehow with king to h1 or something, but now the queen is coming again into the game, and this game is over. Really immortal tactical shots are possible always in the king's Indian. If you, of course, here after move f3 cover the games like this, then queen to h4 leads immediately into a checkmate. So you see, after king to g2 and here rook to g7, and knight to e5, g takes h2, king to h2, and now, as we said, after bishop to d6, you are forced here to play the move bishop to f2. But now we just play queen to e7, again attack the knight. If you try retreat again, this knight move comes g4. After something like f takes g4, look at this, h takes g4, and now we just start to let this pawn roll here on the king side. The rook is coming into the game, so again I think it's a really bad game here for white. You're getting destroyed by this beautiful bishop's activity. The queen will finally come into the game, so I would not really love to play anymore this game from white's perspective. So I think, as we said, this move rook to e1 in the beginning wasn't good. A better choice was simply h takes g3. In the game, rook to e1, Hikaru sacrifices now the knight on g2. Here Boris Gelfand played now d takes c7, a huge blunder, because now Hikaru plays a stunning tactic, knight takes e1, and he's sacrificing now the queen for the first time, because actually you cannot take the queen here on d8 because you get checkmated by the pawn here on g2. Really stunning immortal tactics. So here after move knight to e1, we have queen to E1, but again, first a check after king takes G2. Now the rook is coming into the game. The king has to step back on H1 or F1. In the game, king to H1 was played by Boris Gelfand, but let's see now what happened if you play king to F1. Then you get bishop to H3. You have to play king to F2, and now this other bishop is coming into the game. You just can prolong the game, of course, by playing the move knight to E3, bishop to E3 leads again into beautiful checkmate. So that's why here Boris had to escape with the move king to H1, but now Hikaru offers the queen for the second time. He's not retreating with the queen because he's threatening checkmate on G2. Boris Gelfand protects this idea, but now again a beautiful tactic, queen to D3, again deflecting the bishop from the defense of the G2, and now if you pick up the queen, then you get again checkmate on G2. So of course Boris didn't play this. He played now knight to E5. He hits the queen now again bishop to F1. Again, you don't have time to pick up the queen because again you get checkmate on G2. So it was really stunning what here Hikaru Nakamura did. After bishop to F1, we have queen to F1. Now finally Hikaru Nakamura grabs now the knight on C3 and is up a whole piece. In the continuation, we have now rook to C1. We have now queen to E5. Even if you play something like, I don't know, knight to D3, we just pick up here the pawn on C7. You can play maybe bishop to B6. Now we just retreat, and here from this point on, of course, it's game over because black is up here a whole rook. So that's why after move queen to C3, here a rook to C1, queen to E5, C8 the promotion, rook to C8, rook takes C8, and after queen to E6 in this position, actually Boris Gelfand resigned. So white has lost a piece, black is up a whole piece. So this is of course completely winning here for Hikaru Nakamura. So incredible, immortal game. As I said, in my opinion, in chess history books, this will be called the Hikaru Nakamura Immortal. A really stunning game, really sharp King's Indian tactical battle. And if you put now this game into this PGN of the game into your maybe analysis at home, you'll see that here Hikaru Nakamura played without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders. This was simply one of his best games, in my opinion, really one of the best games of all time. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the King's Indian for sure. If you want to see more about the King's Indian, check out my playlist. Here's the link of our King's Indian studies. You can have maybe a good preparation here from black's perspective. And if you want to see more brutal tactical games, check out my best chess games of all time series with more Hikaru Nakamura games, Magnus Carlsen games, really with the best games of all times. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos and what to say. Chess is the best, of course.